Beloved seekers of practical wisdom, dear family of thoughtful builders and careful stewards, there is a question that separates daydreamers from doers. A question that reveals whether someone truly understands wealth building or just talks about it. A question that, when answered honestly and specifically, becomes a roadmap to financial transformation. T pro RO of 10 years. If someone handed you $10,000 today, right now, what would you do with it? Not what should you do, not what textbooks say, but what would I, someone who spent 7 decades building and studying wealth, actually do with $10,000 if it appeared in my account this morning? This isn't theoretical. This isn't academic. This is the exact step-by-step plan I would execute, the specific allocation, the precise reasoning, the real-world implementation that balances safety with growth, patience with opportunity, wisdom with courage. And I'm going to share it with you. Not because $10,000 will make you wealthy by itself. It won't. But because how you handle $10,000 reveals everything about how you'll handle 100,000, 1 million, 10 million. The principles scale. The discipline compounds. The mindset determines everything. Let me tell you why this matters so deeply. Why this question isn't just about money. It's about character, about priorities, about understanding what wealth building actually requires. I've watched thousands of people receive money over the decades. Inheritances, bonuses, tax refunds, windfalls of all kinds. And I can predict with shocking accuracy whether they'll be wealthy in 20 years, simply by watching what they do with that first substantial amount. Most people squander it, not intentionally, not maliciously. They just don't have a plan, don't have priorities, don't understand the opportunity cost of every dollar. So they spend some on immediate desires, maybe save a little, let the rest drift away on things they can't even remember 6 months later. And the opportunity to change their trajectory, it evaporates. But a few people, a precious few, they treat that money like the seed capital it could become. They make intentional decisions. They allocate strategically. They understand that $10,000 deployed wisely in given time can compound into life-changing wealth, and they act accordingly. So which person are you? The one who lets opportunity slip away, or the one who seizes it and never lets go? Let me show you what seizing it actually looks like. Not theory, not platitudes, but specific, actionable, implementable decisions. Here's what I would do with $10,000 today, and more importantly, here's why. First $1,000 immediate financial foundation. Before I invest a single dollar, before I think about returns or growth or anything exciting, I establish foundation. Because without foundation, everything else is built on sand, and houses built on sand collapse in storms. That first $1,000 goes into a high-yield savings account, emergency fund, cash reserve, call it whatever you want. But it's money that sits there accessible, liquid, boring. Money that earns maybe 4 or 5% interest, nothing spectacular, but available instantly if needed. Why start here? Why not put everything into investments immediately? Because life happens. Cars break down, medical emergencies arise, job losses occur. And if you don't have accessible cash when these things happen, you're forced to sell investments at the worst times. You lock in losses. You interrupt compound growth. You destroy the very wealth you're trying to build. I learned this lesson the hard way decades ago. I invested everything, every dollar, felt proud of being fully invested and maximizing returns. Then my car died, needed $3,000 in repairs. I had no cash, had to sell stocks that were down 20%, locked in a $600 loss to fix a car. Stupidity, costly stupidity. From that moment, I always kept emergency cash. Always. Even when it felt like I was missing out on investment gains. Because the peace of mind, the ability to weather storms without forced selling, that's worth more than any incremental return. So first $1,000 emergency foundation, non-negotiable, before anything else. Next $2,000 knowledge investment is second. This might surprise you. $2,000 not into stocks or bonds or real estate, but into knowledge, into building the competence that will guide every financial decision for the rest of my life. $2,000 buys a lot of education. Books, online courses, subscriptions to quality financial publications, maybe attending an investment conference, perhaps hiring a fee-only financial advisor for a few hours of education and portfolio review. This isn't spending. This is investing in the most valuable asset I have, My own judgment. Because here's what most people miss. They think they need money to make money. But what they actually need is knowledge to make money. Knowledge to avoid mistakes. Knowledge to recognize opportunities. Knowledge to act when others hesitate. $10,000 in the hands of someone with knowledge compounds into millions. $10,000 in the hands of someone without knowledge evaporates into nothing. The difference isn't the money, it's the knowledge. I would buy the classic investment books. Graham's The Intelligent Investor, Fisher's Common Stocks and Uncommon Profits. I'd subscribe to quality research services. I'd take online courses on financial statement analysis. I'd invest in understanding businesses, markets, valuation, psychology. And here's the beautiful part. This knowledge investment pays dividends forever. A book that costs $30 and teaches you to avoid one major investment mistake. That book might save you $50,000 over your lifetime. The return on investment is incalculable. But most people skip this step. They want to jump straight to buying stocks. They think knowledge is too slow, too boring, too indirect, and they end up making expensive mistakes because they didn't know what they were doing. Don't make that mistake. Invest in knowledge first. It's the foundation of everything else. Thus, next $1,000 financial tools and systems. $1,000 to set up the infrastructure that makes wealth building automatic, efficient, organized. This means opening the right accounts. A Roth IRA if I'm eligible. A regular taxable brokerage account. Setting up automatic transfers, configuring portfolio tracking. Maybe paying for quality portfolio management software. Setting up systems that make good behavior automatic. Why spend money on this? Because systems trump willpower. Every time. You cannot rely on discipline alone. You need systems that make the right choices easy and the wrong choices hard. Automatic transfers from checking to investment accounts mean I invest consistently without thinking about it. Without deciding each month whether to invest. It just happens. Removes excuses. Quality tracking tools mean I can monitor portfolio performance, see asset allocation track toward goals. Not obsessively, but clearly, so I know where I stand, where I'm heading, whether adjustments are needed. This infrastructure investment pays for itself thousands of times over. Because it's the difference between intentions and actions, between knowing what to do and actually doing it consistently for decades. Remaining $6,000, strategic investment allocation docs. And now we get to actual investing, $6,000 deployed into assets that will compound over time. And here's exactly how I'd allocate it. $3,000 core index fund position. Half of my investment capital goes into a simple total stock market index fund. Vanguard Total Stock Market, Fidelity Total Market Index. Something that owns thousands of businesses across every sector. Broad diversification, minimal fees, maximum simplicity. Why start here? Why not pick individual stocks right away? Because this is the foundation, the core, the base that will likely outperform 90% of professional investors over long time periods. This is the position I'll hold forever. The one I'll never sell. The one that compounds regardless of what else I do. $3,000 today in a total market index fund, growing at historical market rates of about 10% annually, becomes over $50,000 in 30 years without adding another penny. That's the power of this core position. Reliable, proven, automatic, and it's the position that gives me permission to be more aggressive with other portions. Because I know my foundation is solid, diversified, unlikely to completely fail. This $3,000 core means I'm already participating in American business growth. Everything else is enhancement. A $2,000 quality individual stock, say. Now I get selective. $2,000 split between 2 or 3 individual businesses I understand deeply. Businesses with competitive advantages, durable earnings, strong balance sheets, reasonable valuations. This is where knowledge from that earlier $2,000 investment pays off. Because now I'm not just buying the market. I'm buying specific businesses I believe will outperform. Businesses I've researched, understand, have conviction about. Maybe it's a consumer staples company with 50 years of dividend growth. Maybe it's a technology company with network effects. Maybe it's an industrial company trading at a discount because of temporary challenges. The specific businesses matter less than the process. Understanding what I'm buying, why I'm buying it, what would make me sell. This $2,000 allocation is my active investing portion, the part where I try to beat the market through selectivity and patience. Will I succeed? Maybe. Maybe not. But because it's only 20% of my investment capital, and because my core index position provides foundation, I can afford to try to learn, to potentially outperform without risking everything. That's $1,000, cash opportunity fund, final 1,000 stays in cash, in my brokerage account, earning money market rates. Just sitting there, waiting for what? For opportunities, for moments when the market panics and quality businesses go on sale, for specific situations where I see compelling value, for the flexibility to act when others can't. This $1,000 is my powder, my dry ammunition, the capital that lets me be greedy when others are fearful. And psychologically, it's incredibly valuable, because knowing I have cash available, it makes me more patient, less likely to chase, more willing to wait for my pitch. Most investors are always fully invested, always. They feel like cash is wasted opportunity. But cash is optionality, cash is patience, cash is readiness, and that $1,000, it might sit for a year or two. But when the opportunity comes, when something I want to own is suddenly 20 or 30% cheaper than it should be, I have capital ready, and that opportunity, seized at the right moment, can generate returns that justify years of patient waiting. So that's the allocation. 1,000 emergency fund, 2,000 knowledge, 1,000 systems, 3,000 core index fund, 2,000 quality stocks, 1,000 cash opportunity fund, $10,000, deployed strategically, intentionally, with clear purpose for every dollar. But allocation is only the beginning. What matters even more is what I do next, how I manage these positions, how I think about them, how I resist the urge to tinker and trade and constantly adjust. Because here's the hard truth. The allocation I just described, it's not magical. It's not dramatically better than a dozen other reasonable allocations. What makes it work isn't the specific percentages. It's the discipline to execute it and then leave it alone, to let time and compound interest do their work, to resist the temptation to constantly optimize and adjust. Now let me tell you what happens next, because this is where most people fail. Not in the planning, not in the allocation, but in the execution and the patience that follows. Most people would set up this allocation, and then within 6 months they'd be tinkering, adjusting, second-guessing. They'd read an article about a hot stock and want to shift money around. They'd see the market drop and panic about their equity exposure. They'd get impatient with the boring index fund and want something more exciting. And every time they tinker, every time they adjust, every time they trade, they interrupt the compound process. They generate taxes. They incur costs. They make emotional decisions disguised as rational ones. And they destroy the very wealth they're trying to build. So here's what I would do after deploying that $10,000. And this is harder than the deployment itself. This requires more discipline, more patience, more wisdom. I would do nothing, absolutely nothing, for at least 1 year, minimum. That core index fund, don't touch it. Don't check the price daily. Don't worry about whether it's up or down. It's a long-term position. It doesn't matter what happens this week, this month, this quarter. It matters what happens over decades. Those individual stocks, same thing. I researched them carefully before buying. I understood the businesses. I bought at reasonable prices. Now I let them work. I let the businesses compound. I read the quarterly reports to ensure nothing fundamental has changed. But I don't react to price movements. Price is noise. Business performance is signal. That cash opportunity fund, it stays cash until a real opportunity appears. Not a maybe opportunity. Not something that looks interesting. But a clear, compelling, obvious situation where a quality business is trading at a price that makes no sense. Those situations are rare. I might wait a year or two. That's fine. Patience is not wasted time. It's compounding opportunity. Let me tell you why this discipline matters so much. Why doing nothing is actually doing something incredibly valuable. Every decision you make is an opportunity to be wrong. Every trade is a chance to buy high and sell low. Every adjustment based on market noise is likely to hurt rather than help. The mathematics are brutal. Most active decisions destroy value rather than create it. But doing nothing, holding quality assets, letting time work, that's automatically positive. That's compound interest doing what it does best. That's businesses creating value while you sleep. That's the market's long-term upward bias working in your favor. I learned this through painful experience. In my 30s and 40s, I was active, always adjusting, always optimizing, always convinced that my next trade would improve my returns. And you know what? All that activity, it hurt my returns dramatically. When I compared my actual returns to what I would have earned by just buying and holding, I was shocked. My clever trading had underperformed simple buy and hold by 3 percentage points annually. Over 10 years, that's the difference between doubling my money and tripling it. Massive difference. All from being too active. So I changed. I became boring. I bought carefully and held permanently. I let time do the work, and my returns improved immediately. Not because I got smarter, but because I stopped making so many decisions, stopped generating so many opportunities to be wrong. Now, doing nothing doesn't mean ignoring your investments completely. It means systematic, scheduled review rather than constant monitoring. Here's what I would actually do. First quarterly review 15 minutes, or every 3 months I'd spend 15 minutes reviewing my positions. Not staring at prices, but asking fundamental questions. For my index fund, has my regular contribution happened automatically? Is the allocation still within reasonable bounds? Nothing to change here, just confirming systems are working. For my individual stocks, have I read the latest quarterly report? Has anything fundamentally changed about the business? Are competitive advantages intact? Is management still executing well? If yes to all, hold. If no to any, investigate deeper. For my cash position, have any extraordinary opportunities appeared? Has the market panicked about something creating obvious mispricings? If no, cash stays cash. 15 minutes, 4 times a year, 1 hour annually spent on actual portfolio management. Everything else is noise. As annual deep review, 2 hours once a year, I do a deeper dive. Look at overall returns. Consider whether allocation still makes sense. Think about lessons learned. Evaluate whether my investment thesis for individual positions remains valid. This is also when I'd consider adding new capital if I have it. Tax refund, bonus salary increase. Any new money gets allocated according to the same principles, most to index fund, some to quality stocks if I've found something compelling, some to cash reserves. But this annual review isn't about changing everything. It's about confirming that what I'm doing still makes sense, that my strategy remains aligned with my goals, that nothing fundamental has changed requiring adjustment. Most years, the conclusion is keep doing what I'm doing. Don't change anything, just keep contributing and holding. That might sound boring. It is boring. But boring makes you rich. Exciting makes you broke. Now let me address something critical. Something that will determine whether this $10,000 deployment actually compounds into substantial wealth. The question of additional contributions. Because $10,000 alone, even deployed perfectly, won't make you wealthy. It's a start. It's a foundation. It's important. But what really matters is what you do next, whether you keep adding, keep building, keep compounding. Here's what I would commit. Adding at least $500 monthly going forward, every single month without fail, for decades. Why 500? Because it's substantial enough to matter, but modest enough to be achievable for most people earning decent incomes. It's roughly what you'd save by cutting a few subscriptions, eating out less often, driving an older car than you could afford. But here's the magic. That $500 monthly, added to $10,000 starting capital, invested at 10% annually, becomes over $1.2 million in 30 years. $1.2 million. From $10,000 initial plus $500 monthly. That's the real wealth building. Not the initial $10,000, but the persistent monthly additions. The refusing to stop. The maintaining discipline through everything. Through market crashes. Through life changes. Through temptations to spend instead of save. The $10,000 gets you in the game. The monthly $500 keeps you in the game. The combination builds wealth that changes your life. Now let me talk about the psychology of this approach, because the numbers are simple. The execution is hard, and what makes it hard isn't the math, it's the mind. Psychological challenge one comparison of F. Within weeks of deploying this plan, you'll see other people making money faster. Someone will brag about a stock that doubled. Someone will show off cryptocurrency gains. Someone will talk about their real estate deal that made 50% in 6 months. And you'll look at your boring index fund that's up 3%. Your quality stocks that have barely moved. Your cash sitting there earning nothing exciting. And you'll wonder, am I doing this wrong? Should I be doing what they're doing? Here's the truth. Those spectacular gains you're hearing about, they're either lucky temporary or lies. Mostly lies. People love to brag about winners and hide losers. They'll tell you about the stock that doubled but won't mention the 3 that went to 0. And even when the gains are real, they're usually not sustainable. The person who made 50% this year will likely lose 30% next year. The volatility works both ways, but they'll stop talking about it when the losses come. Your boring approach won't generate impressive cocktail party stories, but it will generate wealth, reliable, predictable, compounding wealth. And 20 years from now, you'll be wealthy while the storytellers are still chasing. Psychological challenge 2: impatience. After 6 months, you'll check your account. Your 10,000 has become 10,400, maybe 10,600 if the market's been good. A few $100. Doesn't feel like much. Doesn't feel like it's working. You'll think at this rate it'll take forever. Maybe I need a more aggressive approach. Maybe I need to take bigger risks. Maybe I need to find faster growing investments. But this thinking misses the point completely. Compound wealth doesn't grow linearly. It grows exponentially. The first few years always feel slow because the base is small. But as the base grows, the same percentage returns generate larger absolute dollars. Your 10,000 growing 10% is $1,000. Not impressive. But in 20 years, when your portfolio is 300,000, 10% is $30,000 in 1 year. Same percentage. Vastly different absolute amount. The early years are about building the base, setting the foundation, establishing habits. The spectacular wealth creation comes later, but only if you persist through the slow beginning. Psychological challenge 3: market volatility. Inevitably, the market will drop, maybe 6 months after you invest, maybe 2 years, but it will drop 15%, 20%, maybe more. And you'll watch your 10,000 become 8,500. Your contributions will seem to disappear into losses. You'll feel foolish. You'll think, I should have waited. I should have known this was coming. I should sell now before it gets worse. But this is exactly when you must do nothing. Actually, not nothing. You must keep buying. Keep making those monthly contributions. Because now you're buying at discount prices, accumulating shares when they're on sale. The drop isn't destroying your wealth. It's creating opportunity. But only if you have the stomach to buy when it feels terrible. Only if you understand that volatility is the price of admission for equity returns. Only if you can see past the temporary pain to the long-term gain. I've lived through dozens of market drops, crashes, corrections, bear markets. Every single time, the people who panicked and sold were hurt. Every single time, the people who stayed invested and kept buying came out ahead. The market always recovers. Always. And the investors who stay patient always benefit. But you must survive the psychological warfare of watching temporary losses without making permanent mistakes. Let me tell you about the most valuable trait in investing. It's not intelligence, not education, not analytical ability. It's emotional stability. The ability to stay calm when everyone else is panicking. The ability to stick with your plan when everything feels wrong. This $10,000 deployment. The real challenge isn't figuring out where to put it. The real challenge is having the emotional fortitude to leave it there, to keep adding to it, to ignore the noise, to trust the process even when the process seems to be failing. That emotional stability, you can't buy it. You can't learn it from a book. You develop it through experience, through surviving your first market crash without selling, through watching your portfolio drop 20% and still making your monthly contribution, through sitting still when every instinct screams at you to do something. And here's the beautiful secret. Once you develop that stability, once you prove to yourself that you can stay calm through chaos, investing becomes easy. The hard part isn't the strategy. The hard part is the psychology. And if you master the psychology, the strategy takes care of itself. TRANSFORMATIVE OVR time. Now let me show you what actually happens if you execute this plan. Not the theory, not the hope, but the mathematical and psychological reality that unfolds over time. Because understanding the journey, seeing the full picture, that's what gives you strength to persist when it's hard. Year 1. You start with $10,000 deployed as I described. You add $500 monthly. Total contributions for the year $16,000. At 10% returns, your portfolio ends the year at around $17,600. You've made about $1,600 in investment gains. Not impressive. You worked hard all year, saved diligently, sacrificed things you wanted, and you made $1,600 in gains, less than you probably spent on coffee and restaurants. It feels small, insignificant, like maybe this whole investing thing is overrated. This is the danger zone. This is where most people quit, because the results don't match the effort. The sacrifice feels greater than the reward. They don't see the point. They don't understand that they're planting seeds that won't bear fruit for years. But you persist, because you understand something they don't. You understand that the first year isn't about the gains. It's about establishing the habit, proving to yourself that you can do this, building the discipline that will carry you for decades. Year 5. You've contributed $10,000 initially plus $500 monthly for 60 months. Total contributions, $40,000. At 10% average annual returns, your portfolio is worth around $64,000. You've made $24,000 in investment gains over 5 years. Now it's starting to feel real. $24,000 isn't nothing. That's a car. That's a down payment. That's meaningful money. And you can see it growing, not dramatically, but visibly, reliably. Your monthly contributions are adding up. The compound returns are accelerating. But here's what else is happening. Something subtle but profound. You've changed. You're no longer someone who's trying to invest. You're an investor. You've proven it to yourself through 5 years of consistent action, through market ups and downs, through life changes, through temptations to quit. You persisted, and that persistence has become part of your identity. Year 10. Total contributions $70,000. Portfolio value approximately $130,000. Investment gains $60,000. Your gains now exceed your initial $10,000 starting point. The money is working as hard as you are. This is the inflection point. The moment when compound interest starts feeling powerful rather than theoretical. Your portfolio is generating thousands of dollars in annual returns. Returns that required no additional work from you. Returns that happened while you slept, while you lived your life, while you focused on other things. And something else is happening psychologically. You're no longer worried about the money. You check your portfolio quarterly like clockwork. But you don't obsess. Don't panic during drops. Don't get euphoric during rallies. You've developed investor temperament, the emotional stability that separates successful long-term investors from everyone else. Year 15. Total contributions $100,000. Portfolio value approximately $220,000. Investment gains $120,000. Your investment gains now exceed your total lifetime contributions. Think about that. You put in $100,000 through disciplined monthly saving over 15 years. And the market gave you an additional $120,000, more than you contributed, just from staying patient and staying invested. This is when wealth building stops feeling like sacrifice and starts feeling like momentum. You're not grinding anymore. You're coasting. The compound engine you built is running on its own power. Your contributions still matter, but the investment returns are doing more work than your contributions are. Year 20. Total contributions $130,000. Portfolio value approximately $360,000. Investment gains $230,000. You're approaching the critical milestone, the point where your portfolio could generate enough returns to cover your entire living expenses. Financial independence is no longer a distant dream. It's a visible destination. Maybe 5 more years, maybe 10. But you can see it, feel it, know it's coming. And that knowledge, that certainty, it changes everything about how you think about work, life, choices. Year 30. Total contributions $190,000. Portfolio value approximately $1.2 million. Investment gains over $1 million. You are a millionaire, not from getting lucky, not from taking wild risks, not from knowing secret information, from doing something simple consistently for 30 years. Let me tell you what this journey teaches you, what you learn through the decades of patient accumulation. Lessons that have nothing to do with money, but everything to do with living well. This lesson one: time is your greatest asset, not intelligence, not connections, not starting capital. Time. Because time allows compound interest to work. Time allows mistakes to be recovered from. Time allows patience to pay off. Time transforms small, consistent actions into extraordinary outcomes. This $10,000 deployment, it's not about the 10,000. It's about the 30 years you give it to compound. About the 360 months of contributions. About the decades of patience while others are chasing quick wins. Young people have an asset older people can never reclaim: time. If you're 25 and you start this plan, you have 40 years until retirement. 40 years for this money to compound. That's not just good, that's life-changing. That's the difference between working until you die and retiring comfortably at 65. But if you're 45 and just starting, you still have 20 years, still enough time to build substantial wealth. Not as much as starting at 25, but enough to change your life, enough to retire with dignity, enough to leave something for your children. The lesson is: start now, whatever your age. Whatever your circumstances, start now, because the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. Lesson 2: consistency beats intensity. Someone who invests $500 monthly for 30 years will be wealthier than someone who invests $5,000 once a year for 30 years. Same total amount, but the consistent approach wins, because it forces discipline, because it uses dollar cost averaging, because it prevents the "I'll do it later" procrastination that destroys most investment plans. This $10,000 deployment with ongoing monthly contributions, it's teaching you consistency, the habit of showing up, the discipline of non-negotiable action, the understanding that small persistent efforts compound into extraordinary results. I've known brilliant people who made spectacular amounts of money in bursts, a huge bonus one year, a windfall the next. But they never built lasting wealth because they lacked consistency. They'd make a lot, spend a lot, save nothing, then make a lot again, repeat the cycle. 30 years later, they had nothing despite having earned millions. But I've known average earners who saved consistently, $500 monthly, every month, for decades, and they retired wealthy, not because they earned more, but because they were more consistent, because they understood that wealth building is a marathon, not a sprint. Lesson 3. Simplicity is sustainable. Complex investment strategies fail because they require constant attention, expertise, adjustment. You can't maintain complexity for 30 years. You get tired. You lose interest. Complex strategies get abandoned, but simple strategies: buy index funds, hold quality stocks, keep cash reserves, add monthly. Do nothing else. That's sustainable forever. That's executable at 25 and at 75. That's a strategy you can maintain through marriage, divorce, children, career changes, health issues, everything life throws at you. This $10,000 deployment is intentionally simple, not because I'm not sophisticated enough to create something complex, but because sophisticated, complex strategies don't work for real people living real lives. Simple strategies executed consistently beat sophisticated strategies executed sporadically every single time. Lesson 4: emotional control is everything. You can have perfect strategy, perfect allocation, perfect timing, and still fail if you panic and sell during crashes, if you get greedy and chase during bubbles, if you let emotions override discipline. The 30-year journey from $10,000 to $1.2 million, it's not primarily about investment selection. It's about emotional control, about staying calm during the 2008 crash, the 2020 pandemic panic, the corrections and bear markets and moments of terror that inevitably come. Most people lose money not because they pick bad investments, but because they make emotional decisions at the worst times. They sell at bottoms. They buy at tops. They panic when they should be patient. They get euphoric when they should be cautious. The discipline of this plan, the boring consistency of monthly contributions, the refusal to tinker or trade or constantly adjust, that's emotional training. That's learning to separate feelings from decisions. That's developing the temperament that separates wealthy investors from everyone else. Now let me tell you what I wouldn't do with $10,000, because understanding what to avoid is as important as knowing what to pursue. So I wouldn't try to time the market. I wouldn't wait for a crash to invest. Wouldn't try to predict tops and bottoms. Wouldn't hold cash waiting for perfect entry points. I'd invest systematically regardless of market conditions, because time in the market beats timing the market. Always. I wouldn't chase hot stocks. I wouldn't put everything into whatever everyone is talking about. The latest tech sensation, the trending cryptocurrency, the stock that doubled last month. Those are lottery tickets, not investments. They might work once. They won't work consistently for 30 years. Thus, I wouldn't use leverage. I wouldn't borrow money to invest more. Wouldn't use margin. Wouldn't take loans to increase my position. Leverage amplifies gains but also amplifies losses. And in this plan, we're not trying to get rich quick. We're trying to get rich certainly. Leverage is the enemy of certainty. I wouldn't day trade. I wouldn't try to profit from short-term price movements. Wouldn't spend my days watching screens and making trades. Day trading is a game where the house always wins. The transaction cost, the taxes, the emotional toll. They destroy returns and lives. DRs, I wouldn't tell everyone about it. Das, I wouldn't broadcast my investment decisions. Wouldn't seek validation or opinions. Wouldn't turn my financial life into public performance. I'd execute quietly, privately, without need for approval or applause, because the best investors are often the quietest ones. I wouldn't stop learning, as even after deploying the money, even after years of success, I'd keep reading, keep studying, keep improving my understanding, not to constantly change strategy, but to deepen conviction in what works, to recognize new opportunities, to avoid new mistakes. And most importantly, sirs, I wouldn't quit no matter what happens, no matter how slowly progress seems, no matter how many times I'm tempted to chase something else. I'd commit to this plan for the long term, for decades, for my entire investment life, because quitting is the only true failure in wealth building. Let me end this part with a truth that might make you uncomfortable. This $10,000 plan I've described, it's not exciting. It won't make you rich next year. It won't generate stories you can brag about. It won't feel dramatic or impressive or special. It's boring, methodical, unglamorous, the financial equivalent of eating vegetables, exercising regularly and getting enough sleep. Obvious, unsexy, undeniably effective. And that's exactly why it works, because wealth building isn't entertainment. It's not supposed to be exciting. It's supposed to be effective. And effectiveness, real lasting generational effectiveness, comes from boring consistency, not exciting speculation. So if you're looking for excitement, this isn't your plan. Go gamble. Go chase moonshots. Go try to get rich quick. Most people do. Most people fail. But if you want a plan that actually works, that's proven over decades, that transforms ordinary people into wealthy people through nothing more magical than patience and discipline, then this is it. $10,000. Deployed strategically, maintained consistently, given time to compound. That's not just an investment plan, that's a life transformation, disguised as boring arithmetic.